All right. We are recording. We are live. And so, but Annie, I'm still going to ask you what number episode
This
we
is
are.
Tending Lilith's Fire, episode 26.
All right. And we are recording from our respective spaces in Canada and California. Tending Lilith's Fire with Kohenet Annie Matan and myself, Kohenet D'vorah Grenn. And so you were just starting to say something profound and decided you wanted to record at
It's like,
this
let's start
moment.
recording.
And now I don't
Yeah.
remember where we were. I guess
Oh,
we were
I remember
talking.
where we were.
Okay.
So today in particular, I'm very excited to interview D'vorah about the Lilith Institute Women's Leadership Program
I
that's launching
see.
in May.
Okay.
And I'm thrilled that I'm going to be a student, and also I get to share a talk, and so I'll get to see, sort of both sides of that over the course of the next 9 months. And I just also want to address the elephant in the room,
Yes.
or the teddy bear in the room. I threw my back out on Sunday, and other than an inability to sit up in what is supposedly a correct position, I'm in great spirits. So I wanted to do this conversation today. No, if I were not okay, I wouldn't do it. But I'm practicing what I preach as a priestess who priestesses herself,
Yeah.
and showing up in the way that's most comfortable.
I
So what I
love
was
that.
about,
Yeah,
yeah,
I just want to say it reminds me of how we started, which was with a show called Priestessing the Priestesses, and it
yes,
was about how we could have self care so that we could keep taking care of others and leading others. And so
exactly.
you are certainly being a great exemplar of that, and also for the NAP ministry.
Yes, rest is
Oh,
resistance.
right.
Yes,
Although you are quite awake, so go ahead.
I am. Yes, I'm awake and inspired. And I was like, let's record now, because I was just saying to D'vorah that as a student of the women's leadership program, I'm feeling a little bit nervous. And I'm also, and I'll get into that in a second, but I'm also really excited about the intersection of types of wisdom. Because the
Mm.
part that I'm nervous about is, I am a bit allergic to academia, and D'vorah is not. And so, like, D'vorah and many, I think, of the teachers who are going to be in this program are really scholarly, effing smart. I mean, they're all effing smart, but like scholarly, book smart, academically wise humans. And sometimes I find that really overwhelming, and it brings up a lot of it's not exactly imposter syndrome, just an awareness that that's not my comfort zone. And then also, these folks are incredible experiential teachers and feminist teachers, and so even if y'all are adept at academia, you're deconstructing it as you teach. You're deconstructing and challenging and
It's true.
reweaving,
Yeah.
which is why I know it's the right program for me.
So I just want to point out there are two smart people in this virtual room. Okay, a degree
Yeah,
does not make you smart, and I'm
I
sure.
have a degree, but I don't have as many degrees as
Well,
you
yeah, and I'm sure we both know people with advanced degrees or more than one who are either not very personable, not good human beings, or not terribly smart.
That's
So
true too.
I just want to call that out.
Thank you.
But yes, we have one of the things we will be talking about when we bring in leaders from different areas to as models is our pedagogy when we did the Women's Spirituality Master's program at two colleges. And my colleague Dianne Jenett reminded me of this the other day that the way we co-led the program was an amazing model of collaboration and still rare. I think, you do sometimes see co-directors and things like that, but we're going to talk about that in the third cycle. So thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to have this opportunity to talk about the program because I am very excited about it. And I just went for a walk. It's beautiful here, sunny, getting quite warm, and the air smells wonderful, and everything is, blossoming and blooming. And I'm thinking to myself, how did this happen? Where did this come from? It's just really been an inspiration of the last maybe 5 weeks. And little pieces have been collecting, of course, but not in quite this form. So it's interesting. It occurred to me it's the same kind of energy, and I'm sure it's partly driven not only by goddess and unseen forces and the source of life, but my ancestors.
Mm,
Because it's the same kind of energy where there is kind of a wind beneath my wings, and there's no question in my mind, no doubt that this is what I have to do. The next steps just keep showing up. And it's what happened in 2007 when I created Mishkan Shekhinah.
Oh, wow. And
So,
I mean, this has been gestating, I think, in you, and you're like, not ready, not ready, not ready. You know, there's sort of a sense of something brewing for quite a while. And then it just seems like it was ready to emerge. And now it's been emerging with such force, really. And I
yeah.
love that you have your fire for our Tending Lilith's fire in the background, and it's Aries season and spring and birth and all the things. And so it's perfect timing for the birth of this program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to share an overview of what the
I'm
program
going to in a minute. Thank you. I just want to say the fire, when I was looking for a background today, it occurred to me that the name of our show is Tending Lilith's Fire, and I wanted us to talk about how we're doing that. And of course, you threw us, me especially, right into it because I forgot that one of these days you wanted to interview me about the program. So here we are, and I will do the best I can. It's certainly coming from my belly, the fire in my belly. It's coming from my heart. Yes, many pieces have been forming independently, but this kind of container, I think it partly comes out of the fact that we all miss the program we used to teach in, both students and faculty. And it's really built on the relationships that I have and have had and have, in some cases, reconnected with former students and with even a couple of people I graduated with my master's with. So it's a wonderful spectrum. Includes many people from the spectrum of the last 22, 23 years. So it's a 9-month virtual journey. And I'll just, I think, outline the cycles, I think is the easiest. The first cycle, which will be the initiatory fire, is going to have spiritual autobiography, mining your soul's story, facilitated by Maura Torkeldsen and myself. And we'll start out with some materials from Luisah Teish, Yanifa in Yoruba tradition, on ancestor reverence, and on leadership, because we'll be working with the book by Stacey Abrams on leading from the outside. And so we'll have that combination, and our own ancestor reverence practices we'll be talking about and bringing them in. And then a small piece on life visioning, an introduction to an art-based class taught by Shiloh Sophia McLeod. And that will be something she'll come back and teach and lead us in the second cycle. What else? We will have elements, we will have actually available as a separate element outside the program, but that people can purchase 4-class series that I'm doing with Rabbi Nadia Gross on the Tree of Life. And we don't call it this, but it's kind of as a blueprint for living, as a means of finding right alignment within ourselves. And it's something we're very excited about, and that she's been teaching for a long, long time, in part in her wisdom school, which I attended in 2013. And that is a way that she brings in the teachings of the mother line in Kabbalah. And that is something I didn't know any women were doing at the time I took the class, and I don't think to this day many are doing it, but she learned from her grandmother in Israel growing up, and so got certain teachings that we always thought they were secret, but they were also hidden, and they were also kept from women and men under 40, as you know, the Kabbalah. So anyway, and we'll have Miriam Katz bringing in a small shamanic journey component, also in the first cycle. And she has a School of Hebrew Shamanism that she started a few years ago. And so she's going to bring that piece in too. So then we're going to have about 2 live classes a month, although there may be some months in fall when we have more than 2, but they're all recorded. So if people can't attend more than 2, or even have to miss one of those, which sometimes can happen with emergencies, you can watch in your own time. We have some mothers of young kids, so they have time at 10, 11 at night, right? I'm looking at one. And so I want it to be accessible at the times that, you all have available, obviously. There will also be a monthly group connection call, and some of those will have guest speakers those will just be an hour. They're optional, but I'm very excited about then being able to bring in some more people to teach. And yeah. So August through October, I'll be teaching a class on Lilith and the work of Audre Lorde, because I think they share some qualities and positions, such as Audre's famous quote, "Your silence will not protect you." I think Lilith certainly lived according to that. My fire is helping women find voice, and for years was finding my own. And so that is an important one. And that is the second cycle is exploratory fires. And so that's part of that exploration. The life visioning class with Shiloh will happen then. And then a real treat, Menstrual Logic, a new origin story with cultural theorist and beloved poet who Judy Grahn, a lot of it based in her work Blood, Bread, and Roses, which we'll be working with, and Dianne Jenett, who's done some wonderful work in Kerala, India, where she both has studied and done pilgrimage for about 30 years or more, and did her dissertation on a major women's ritual, the largest in the world. Guinness World Book of Records says over 1 million women come to cook porridge for the goddess at Pangala Festival around February every year. And so anyway, out of her studies there and her research, she discovered learned about a quality called Ananku, which is something we have known as Shakti, but it's much earlier and it's completely female, as I remember the description. So she's talked about the menstruating goddess in India, and so that will be part of this menstrual rituals class. I keep calling it blood rituals. It is that, but it's Menstrual Logic is the formal title. And I'll be presenting some of my own work based on Judy's philosophy, metaformic philosophy and theory. And one of those things will probably be the comparison of the ancient and in many cultures still existing traditions and things that happen when a young woman starts to bleed in menarche. Somehow comparing that to what happens when a young Jewish woman comes into her community as a woman in a bat mitzvah. But we don't have the physical component, and that's something I would love to see us have. There's the spiritual, there's the intellectual preparation, but I don't know that there is the physical.
Rabbi, there are communities who are, and there are, I've been learning recently, actually there's someone in the feminist enterprise Commons that I recently joined who's doing rites of passage with physical components exactly for this, for young girls in that life stage. And I'm pretty sure Rav Kohenet Taya Ma Shere has also done.
Well, I was just going to say somebody who's been doing it for I think quite a while is Rabbi Lynn Gottlieb.
Oh yeah.
And that would be, if I had a kid that age, a girl, that's who I'd want to go with. Yeah, because I'm sure that would be amazing. But yes, so important, because I remember we tried to do one for my niece, and she, like many teens today, this was like 10, 15 years ago, they just get totally embarrassed at the idea. They want nothing to do with a particular celebration honoring your period. So this is a way. It's a marvelous way to celebrate a young girl's passage. And
we're shifting that culture now as we go. I think when my kid, who's 6 now, when she reaches that age, I don't think she's going to be embarrassed. I think
your daughter, no.
Right, so let's keep talking about it, so those who are listening can think about it too. And I'm glad to see there's also quite a bit of mainstream influence there. There are now kits for teenage girls who start menstruating to celebrate. So
there are.
I love the evolution of period underwear and also comforting things. So it's such good timing. I feel like this kind of learning that you're offering in the women's leadership program, and we're coming into this new paradigm where these ideas are becoming more and more mainstream, and those of us who are in the program can help push that wave forward.
That's true. Absolutely. Because as we know and have discussed, we are in the middle of a paradigm shift, and I think a lot of us want it to happen faster. So that means it takes more of us, and it takes a lot of energy. And of course, the secret is, how do we keep refueling ourselves without depleting ourselves. And that's something you and I have talked about a lot.
And
But
that's going to be in the third session of the Women's Leadership
what,
Institute,
the
right?
menstrual
Something about
class?
self-care. Oh,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
how do we
self-care.
refuel ourselves?
There will be self-care practices throughout
Oh,
the
good.
entire program, and also little bits on divination. And
Ooh.
what I forgot to say, the main theme of the first cycle is developing and trusting our intuition.
Nice.
And so divination, how we do that, shamanic journeys, self-care practices, they're all part of the same piece in a certain way, Anyway, the other stuff in other offerings in August through October is that Luisah Teish will teach a class based on her Mother Sense leadership model. And she calls this one A Way Out of War. But it is a whole different model. Yeah. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And also Mandisa Wood will teach her body is a sacred canvas. She's an artist and a priestess and an educator and dancer, many other things, and finishing her PhD. And so there will be a big art component in that one, I think in the third of 3 classes. But yeah, her body is a sacred canvas. So sacred body is a focus of the second cycle. And then the fires of transformation and liberation is the third cycle, and that runs November to January. Yeah. And that will have lessons in leadership from the reindeer mother, which is apparently a universal symbol, with priestess Yeshe Matthews, who, if you don't know her, is an amazing priestess initiated in a number of traditions, very serious, great integrity, great, so grounded, and has a beautiful Mount Shasta goddess temple that she founded. And every morning, like clockwork, she does a devotion to Kuan Yin, which then is posted. The video gets posted by about 10:15 Pacific time every day. I mean, she has an incredible amount of discipline because this is part of her practice. And so she does that devotion every day. And if anyone ever needs a little extra something, to get started in their day, I really recommend tuning into that. She has an app called Goddess Temple, and it comes through there, but then it gets posted, in the app, and I think also on her YouTube channel.
Cool.
Yeshe Matthews. And so then I'm doing a 7-part class with Monette Chilson and Monica Rodgers. Monette, as you know, founded Woman Spirit Reclamation, and Monica Rodgers is the Revelation Woman and does the Revelation Podcast Project on Instagram. And both amazing women, incredible amounts of energy. Monica does a podcast, I think, every week and has for 2 years. And so you can always find out about those on Instagram because she posts when they're ready.
She's on, and the podcast is available wherever you listen and download your podcasts.
Right. But I mean, she posts excerpts, and and every time one's about to drop, she lets you know ahead of time and engages you with questions. And right now, Monette is teaching a class on Eve with Patricia, or producing it with Patricia Lynn Riley, who wrote, as you know, A God Who Looks Like Me, and so much other wonderful, important material over the last, I think 25 years at least. But that was one of my primary sources in my early grad student days. A God Who Looks Like Me. Yeah, she's amazing. And so she's teaching on Eve, and I really want to do that class because Eve, has had a lot to do with Lilith. So, so anyway, we're doing something called Moving from Revelation to Revolution, a 7-part class. And so part of the leadership program will probably be that students will be able to see that intro or the first class and then the last one. I think that's all we'll have time for, but to get just a taste of, what we're talking about. And it has to do with stages that we've all gone through in our own development, our own dark nights of the soul, our own times we fell into the abyss and how we climbed back out and, things like that. So it's not part of this class, but anyone who knows or wants to investigate the descent myth of Inanna, it will have a lot of parallels to that, I think. Talks from several leaders whose work is grounded in their values, and you'll be one of those speakers.
That's where I get to show up.
Yep. And we'll have several other people, and I'm still talking with them. And then some teachings on conflict resolution from another Yoruba priestess who we interviewed here about a year ago, I think so, Chipala Maes Valdez, and some others, I think, speaking on organization and maybe with her on conflict resolution too. And yes, again, self-care tools as we figure out, okay, how do we take all of this knowledge now and these learnings and our reflections of the 9 months into the world. In the beginning, of course, and all through also, we're going to be examining what are your styles of leadership? How do we not follow a patriarchal model? We're doing that right now. You know, I mean, 3-4 years ago, I'm sure I would have said to you, "Oh well, we can't shoot this today. We have to wait till we're both properly sitting up in our offices and feeling 100%." But I think one of the great things about us working together in this collaboration is that we've each pushed each other at certain times when the other one hasn't felt particularly like recording. And often some of the most, I think, wonderful conversations have come out of that space too. So I just want to call that out. So, two great bonus gifts for people joining the program. One is that they will receive complimentary membership for 9 months to the Lilith Institute at the Ishtar level, which provides a lot of wonderful benefits, including, I think it'll be half off of the Lilith's Fire Circle, which is a separate program we're doing in August for 4 sessions, and then a closing full moon circle in September. And people get to have free access to 3 of your new moon red tent circles.
Yeah.
You want to say something about that?
Yeah, so the New Moon Red Tent Circle is a sacred space for women to situate ourselves in the time that we're in, the season that we're in, the astrology, the teachings of that time. We bring offerings from our own wisdom, skills, and experience for our shared altar. And my favorite part is that we have a sharing circle, a sacred confidential space just to be witnessed and held with no advice and no fixing and no crosstalk, just showing up in our authenticity, vulnerability, and power, and just holding each other. We had last night was our April new moon, and it's just such a rich, beautiful space.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to get to bring to invite in women from this leadership program to come join us.
And they will have such a unique experience with you, although we're going to, of course, introduce some of the ritual pieces and having altars, creating altars together and so on. But I know yours is its own very special offering. And yeah, I think they'll be very excited to have that kind of access.
I hope so. Yeah. And I should say what I'm doing now is also a weaving of a few other women's circles, like the legacies of a few others. I've worked over the years with Naomi Tesler, Stein, Emily Antflick, Annisha Lashand, and Roula Said. And all of those amazing women have influenced what our circle looks like now. So it's important to say, I've been doing this for 14 years, leading women's new moon circles. And over those years, I've gotten to intersect with these other phenomenal facilitators and, of course, taken wisdom and learning and approaches from their approaches as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's something I just also want to mention that is so important to both of us, and that drives me crazy if I see somebody not doing it, and I usually will correct them or call them on it, and that is giving credit to where we learned what we, a lot of what we know. I'm grateful to many of the women in the program that I've just named for their teachings over the years and their examples, and they're pushing me to do, think out, really outside the corporate box sometimes. So yes,
I have to say, my very first Rosh Chodesh, that's New Moon Circle, where I got the song that I sing, and the main model that I use comes from Tamuz Shiran and Tali Weinberg, and that was so. I mean, I'm like, how can I forget them? Because they're the ones who taught me how to do it in the first place.
Beautiful, beautiful, yeah. So there's a certificate of completion in women's leadership at the end of the 9 months, and there will be a rich workbook / reader that people will keep as we put up materials that I think will be of use to women for years to come. I know a lot of these articles have been things I've referred to over the years. Audre Lorde's work, in particular, Judy Grahn's work, and Dianne Jenett's work, and Luisah Teish's work, among just to name a few. Yes.
Question, and you might remember that I'm going to ask this. Why a certificate in women's leadership? What does that mean? Why did you choose these words in particular? And I know you said, I don't know if I want to talk about that. So talk about it in the ways that feel good to talk about it.
Well, I think your question, your preference, perhaps, especially because Lilith Institute is a center for feminist spirituality, was that it have that name. And I feel as though that slot's already been taken. It's taken care of by other folks, either in a couple of cases in the academy, but mostly by people outside of the academy. And maybe for myself, I wanted to branch and reach beyond that, to be more all-encompassing. That does certainly not mean that I won't include it, because it is a thread running through the entire program and my being. So everything is grounded in a feminist spirituality, right? But which crosses traditions, because my own practice is Afro-Semitic. So
I love that.
African and Jewish, yeah.
Yes.
Ancient and modern, modern renewal. So. Yes. And that's something that I think we'll be talking about too, because as I've done some of the interviews and as people apply, I think sometimes they're concerned about that. And in general, in my work over the last few years at least, people are very conflicted sometimes about combining traditions or feeling disloyal to their religion of family, origin of birth. I've been through that journey, so I can definitely talk about it and say that it can be a real struggle for a while, and then eventually, if it's meant to be, if it feels genuine to you, it works out. I now thread at least three things, three kinds of practices, and not all the time. Sometimes one is more called for than another. Someone's death and Kaddish and Yahrzeit, the death anniversary is one of those that's specifically Jewish. However, when my former sister-in-law died and it didn't feel right to say Kaddish for her because she was a devout Catholic, then I went more towards a Yoruba practice. And by the way, discovered that involved lighting a 9-day candle. And I then discovered there are Orthodox Jews who do that as well. So, that's been also some of the beauty of studying all of it and being open to all of these different traditions, because there is a lot more crossover than we were ever taught. And we're excavating that for ourselves, and it just makes the practice richer.
Well, that's the one area of scholarship that I can really claim, because my degree, I have a bachelor's in humanities, which was in religious studies, and so my favorite way into religion is to learn about different practices and notice the intersections and differences, and especially focusing on meaning, the meaning underneath each ritual in whatever tradition. And then it's very easy to see the intersections. And so I find I also went through that period of worrying about being disloyal to my Jewish upbringing. And now I just feel so excited when I learn about other traditions and how different, I call it ritual technology, gets used to express the same core meanings, and that often we're using the same ritual technology by other names or with small differences. And I find it very inspiring to see how we're so connected across traditions. And also really interesting to find out where we're not, like where are the differences and what are they highlighting? What are they highlighting about different core beliefs, and how can we sort of honor all of that as we move through it together? I love this stuff.
And I think that's also what people love about when you do their weddings.
Yes.
You bring all that.
I've been working on a couple of interfaith weddings this week. So it's such a thrill. I love it. It's such a pleasure. And especially when folks like these students that you're talking about are anxious about how to meet a variety of needs, from their families of origin, and honoring different traditions and being true to themselves all at the same time. I love that process of weaving, discovering, what are the things that are meaningful for them and their families, and then discovering where there's space for that interweaving. It's my favorite thing about doing weddings. It's such a pleasure.
Absolutely.
It is.
And discovering and then having the confidence to carry forward our brand of leadership, our style of leadership, without feeling inadequate because it isn't like so and so. You know, I think that's so important
When
because
you say
otherwise,
our style, our brand, can you be more explicit
our
about what
own
you mean?
individual,
Hmm.
the person.
Yes. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is your style of leadership? What is mine? How does mine differ from this colleague of mine? You know, and not to judge ourselves, which I think when we're just starting out, maybe in a field or in our career and first career even, I think that's our tendency to compare whoever's already the
Hmm.
experts and to compare ourselves against that as the standard, which it cannot be by itself. It's
Right.
it's one model.
I'm really excited about discovering what women's leadership looks like
Mm,
through a feminist lens.
mm,
And just to think about even that the concept and the word leadership, like what does it mean to be a leader in this
mm.
way? And I also want to say that, like, I was going to ask you, who do you think are your students? Who do you think are the ideal, like, who is
Mm,
this for and who's this not for? Does it matter what level of experience folks have? How do you know,
mm.
maybe a way to think about it, I always have a little, as an entrepreneur, a little bit of a marketing hat on, like for whom is this a fit, and for whom would you say it might not be a fit? That's
I
the hard one
I
sometimes.
intentionally have designed it so that people at any level can come in.
Mhm.
So there will be people who have careers, especially I think in corporate, where they may feel they've reached the top level and they want to stay there and they feel they have nothing to learn. That might have been me, 25 years, 30 years ago. But it is for people across fields. So it's for entrepreneurs, it's for corporate people, it's for nonprofit, workers, it's for spiritual leaders, of course. I think it's also for healers and body workers who have, herbalists who have their own business if they feel that they want to do something differently or even stand more in their powers, have more confidence about what it is they're offering. Because
When you say, I just want to come back to something for a second where you say, maybe people even in corporate life who feel like they're at the top and have nothing to learn. If
Mhm.
they feel like they have nothing to learn, then they wouldn't come to this, right? Like they
that's,
must,
that's
they,
probably right.
yeah, you want people, I would imagine you want people who feel like, okay, I've gotten as much learning as I can out of and the systems and learning models that I've seen before, and I'm ready to learn something else.
But you asked about what is in terms of my design and my goal.
Yes.
And so mine is to include people, even if they think they maybe don't have anything
Well,
more.
why would they choose?
They
So
might,
if you're,
they
if
might
this,
not, but a friend might say, listen, I found this great program. Why don't you
got it.
join me?
Yes,
I just want to be on this side of it. I want to be ready to also hold those people.
got it.
You know,
Because
um,
if this video is going to be shared in spaces with people who maybe don't know your work as well, and maybe, I mean, chances are most of the people who come in will be people who are already in some way. They'll just be ready for more.
mhm.
But who, yeah, if you're talking to folks who are like, is this for me? What would you want to, what do you feel like they need to be ready for?
Mhm.
Because it's not for everybody. Not everybody on the planet, not every woman on the planet is a
Right.
fit for this program.
Right. And it's
uh,
sometimes a matter of what they feel called for. I had some very interesting questions from a woman yesterday who is really trying to figure out if she can fit this into her life time wise. Um, and
yeah, so maybe talk about that for a
she
second.
wants certain things out of it.
Yep.
And I told her how we approach those particular things. It's a very individual conversation. So what you're asking is a good
But
question,
it's
but I don't have a blanket answer because each conversation I have with each woman determines whether it's for them. And if they feel called for one aspect or another, but they don't know the whole thing or they don't understand this whole offering because some of the classes may look like a mystery, then I explain what each thing is about. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers your
I
question.
mean, okay, so tell us, when if somebody's concerned about the time commitment, for example, so what is the time commitment? How many hours a month are we talking, and how much reading or preparation is expected of us when we're outside of class time?
I think it is roughly, well, in terms of class time, and I think I did count the community, the connection calls. I think I figured something like 12 hours a month, but
Okay.
some of that's not homework. You know, if
In
people,
class time.
that is classes that are being offered, and I think that may even be too much. I think it's probably more like 6. It depends. I have to add it up. It's different. The spring cycle that we're starting with is less.
Okay.
It's 10 hours. Then
Okay.
it's more in the fall because we have more teachers and more exciting classes. And again, if somebody wants to watch a recording, and then be present for 6 hours of classwork, they can do that. And they could even then do, I'm just trying to think what we have. So they could even do 1, 2, 3, 4 live classes in the spring,
Mm-hmm.
that's 8 hours, and do the
Mm-hmm.
rest on their own time through the recordings. There is more, again, a little bit in the winter because there's so much that I want to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
But my main goal is that I take into account people's learning styles, their capacity. What is their end goal? Do they just want a certificate of completion because it would feel nice or look nice on their resume? It's not tied to an academic institution, so it doesn't have to fulfill a certain number of units. And that's part of the freedom that I like in designing it. And
Mm-hmm.
people who want that are not going to go to this program,
Mm-hmm.
unless they can count it if they're in school, like a grad student, if they can count this as an independent study, then it would probably qualify for 2 or 3 units, depending on their institution. So
That's
that's an
exciting.
option for those people. But for people who are coming for self development and further enrichment and to know better either how to do what they're doing if they're already in some kind doing some sort of leadership, or in some cases already there are several of these. As always, they're at a crossroads. They are at a place in their career where they're actually going to change careers. One woman is planning to retire from education and start her own business, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true of several of the students who have already enrolled. So it is meant to bolster their confidence, but especially their trust in themselves and their
Mm-hmm.
intuition. That's a really big piece. And for them to see that there are other women out there who think the way they do, that they don't have to do it in this prescribed way that they grew up with. I thought there was only one way to succeed when I was in corporate. No
Mm-hmm.
question about it.
Mm-hmm.
No question. And that was a time, and I think it's not over yet, when, or it's better, but when women felt they had to go into the workplace wearing the uniform, right, like a blue suit, whatever, and had to follow certain rules around the executive meeting table and so
Mm-hmm.
on. A lot of
Yeah.
that's changed and a lot of it hasn't. There are certainly a lot of disparities still in the workplace. If you're a
Yeah.
server at a restaurant, if you're in a hospitality industry, I mean, everywhere there are these power imbalances. And so I hope the program will give women a way to understand and recognize those and speak up on their behalf when they encounter them.
Great.
Yeah.
I know for me, I'm already working I'm priestessing, I'm a leader, and I've been doing some of this work for a number of years,
Yeah.
and I still feel like a beginner in so many ways. So
Yeah.
I love that this program will give me an opportunity to show up as I am in the ways that I feel confident, and also to learn lots so that I can build confidence. Especially, I want to build confidence and vocabulary for my leadership as a woman,
Mhm.
in my field as a spiritual leader and a psychic mentor, clergy. And I think that some of the language, I'm hoping that I'll get language from this that'll help me describe what I do,
Mhm.
uh, in positive language. So a lot of when I talk about, for example, the Jewish community leadership work I do, I'm often saying like, we're not traditional, we're not this, we're not that. And I want to be able to talk about it in
You
positive
are.
language,
Right.
who we
Right.
are,
Yeah.
who I'm for, who I serve,
Mhm.
and how I'm navigating leadership as a woman through a feminist lens. And I'm trusting and knowing, because I've got to meet some, folks who go check out Priestessing the Priestesses. We interviewed a whole bunch of these amazing leaders who are going to be teaching in this
Yes.
program.
Sure.
So you can go watch them talk about some of the ways that they show up in the world.
And those were our
Uh,
earlier episodes, right? Like
yeah,
one,
that's in
one
Priestessing the
through 15.
Priestesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so there's a playlist you'll see on our channel called Priestessing the Priestesses, and those interviews are actually the later episodes of that series were mostly interviews.
Mhm.
So I know, because I've had small touch points with them. D'vorah's been working with these folks for years. But I know getting to work with them is such an incredible opportunity for connection, for learning, for sort of expanding and evolving in the ways that I hope I'll get to show up in my work in the world. I'm pretty excited about it.
And it also means, I'm thinking one of the things somebody might want to do is develop a curriculum for their final project, right? Because they want to go out and teach. And I will say that having reflected back from the rest of the group, how that curriculum sits with them could be very valuable. And I'm thinking of that because I'm remembering when I first started teaching how nervous I was. And somebody said to me, it really takes 5 years to get comfortable teaching. And that was true. It really took 5 years for me to just be able to walk in and not worry about how it was going to go and know that I could handle the questions that arose and, the whole format, whatever. And that's different probably for different women, but it's just one example. The more we do something, right?
Yeah. So
the easier it gets and the more
people can
we get.
Offer their learning in myriad ways, right? That's one of the gifts of this kind of learning is to be scholarly, creative, and yeah, so I imagine through writing, through art, through embodied work, video, what other modalities would you say?
Lots of modalities of learning, but also for the every 3 months I was going to have them write a reflection paper and do a creative project. Now I've decided to let them choose which it will be.
Great.
And if they want to do both, that's great. The final project will be the end of so in January that'll be due, and that's when we will graduate. And that will be then a slightly longer reflection paper or a more major creative project, and that could be a curriculum.
And what kind of support will students in the program have from you or from faculty to just navigate this process as we go along?
They will have good support. Most of these teachers are much more responsive than the average teacher, I want to say, or people. I want to not speak negatively of anybody because I don't know all the programs in the world, but I do know the response.
But you chose these teachers because you know that they're good at this.
Absolutely, and for their knowledge, but also I'm speaking from the point of view of courses and not just webinars, but yeah, I guess online courses that I've done. And I know the programs that stand out for me are the ones where sometimes the teacher is reachable in between sessions because there are questions. I'm also setting up a space in my Lilith Institute app, which and that will be a place that students can ask each other questions and post about the topics online in a lovely social network that doesn't have algorithms, doesn't have ads, and is a private classroom. Basically, our meetings will be on Zoom, and so it's important everybody, be fairly comfortable using Zoom. I think by now that's most of the population, but not everybody. And there will also be a space. Probably I'll be using Google Drive, where there'll be a dedicated folder for all the readings because I'm going to be posting a lot of articles that aren't required, but that are really rich,
supportive.
Yeah, and yeah. So there will be some assigned readings, but and 2 texts probably every 3 months, but it's not going to be onerous. I wanted to fulfill my own sense of what somebody needs to get the subject, and it's all a lifelong process. You're not going to learn everything they need to know about intuition in 3 months, obviously.
Right, or everything they need to know about women's leadership in 9 months.
Right.
But it sounds like it's a pretty excellent foundation laying, more than just foundation, but like a thick foundation for the work that we all want to be doing in the world.
And a place where everybody can be witnessed and heard, which is often not something we get in the outside world, even in our own relationships. Right? So it's a place where that can happen, and that is often leading to our greatest growth when we see how others receive what we're doing. Right? Or we have a chance to workshop it, as we would say, in a private, hopefully compassionate space. I say hopefully because I was playing with that word again today, and the faculty, yes, they're compassionate. I can't promise all the other students will be, but it will be.
Well, we can model it, right? We model and we set
Absolutely.
expectations, and it sounds like, opportunity to workshop and receive compassion, and also I hope celebration
Absolutely.
for our gifts and the work we're doing. And that's something that I think we definitely don't have enough of in,
Yeah.
as you say, in the outside world, is a space to show up in our power as we're expanding into these leadership models that we're really inspired by and learning.
No, definitely. And we have a small piece on achievements, on recognizing and talking about one's achievements,
Good.
because, yeah, it often doesn't happen. Or there aren't the right people to share it with who would appreciate it, you know?
And it's one of the things I think that we're deconditioning from patriarchy, as we're coming out of, please goddess, coming out of this competitive space, and into a collaborative and celebratory space.
Thank you. That's the other thing I wanted to say, that that is a big part of this model, and that is women collaborating instead of competing. And that,
Yay!
and that is something the faculty will model, and that we'll definitely be talking about. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Sounds
So,
like heaven to me.
and to me, I'm very excited about the way it's taking shape and growing, and who's coming forward because they want to be involved on the teaching side. And yeah, it's yeah, more to be revealed, as Monica would say.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you want to share today for those who might not know as much?
Hmm.
Um, what any
I guess I
how
would
do
tell
they
somebody. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I would say go look at the Lilith Institute website to get a sense of who we are, who I am, and whether you think, how do you feel about the content there. And I'm open to any kinds of questions, and welcome them. How does someone apply? Was that your question?
Yep.
So I wonder if we can post this, probably not in our YouTube channel, but there's a flyer which gives the link to, maybe we can put the link actually in the comments on our YouTube channel.
Does
But
the flyer exist online somewhere? Can we put a link to the flyer?
that's what I'm thinking, and yes, it will.
Great.
Right now, the best thing is for people to write to me,
Okay.
and my address will be in the comments, but it's D'vorah@lilithinstitute.com, and I can answer other questions that we haven't addressed yet here. And I will also want to get the flyer up on the website.
Mm.
I've hesitated because I wanted to give certain groups first crack at registering, and now we're
Mhm.
past that point, and registration deadline is May 1. So I
Mhm.
do want to get the word out a little more broadly. So I'll
And
do
you have, can you share how many spots you have, and are you
14.
comfortable with that? 14 spots, and you're almost half full, right?
Right.
Yeah. And you have more people in the pipeline. So, and there's
And
still 3 weeks left in April. So folks, if you're watching this and going, I think this might be for me, the link to apply is a link to email D'vorah and have a conversation with her. So even if you're not 100% sure, click that link, set up
hmm,
the conversation, ask your questions. And you can see from what I find D'vorah's very infectious energy, as she talks about this, you'll know, right, where you get to practice using your intuition, if this is the right time, if this is the right thing, and you can trust that, and don't wait, because it will fill up.
yeah,
So
and I do want to say also, sometimes your little voice will say, I can't possibly fit this into my schedule, but the other part of you is saying, yeah, but you've got to do it anyway, and
yeah.
that's what took me to Rabbi Shefa Gold's chant leader training. I signed up for that a few years ago, like 2 weeks before, because I've never liked chanting, and I thought, are you kidding? And it was another one of those things that I was just feeling really driven by the ancestors to explore, and it was an amazing experience. It got me out of my head. It was one of the few things that has gotten me, to approach things from a more embodied place, and which is definitely, as you know, how we process. And so
Mhm.
anybody who may be watching this who thinks, oh, I don't like to move, I don't even like to watch somebody move, I want to be all in my head. There's plenty of material in this program to satisfy them. The
Yeah.
embodied piece, I just want to say, somebody who I hope will hold it through the whole program is Claudine Shemirani, of Soul Body Wisdom, and she does very sensual, beautiful movement, and even just watching some of her videos or watching her do it live has had me get out of my chair and move, just because it's really good to move the energy, and people can also turn off their cameras and just do that privately. It's just
Mhm.
we want them to have that experience, and a lot of embodied and experiential experience along the way. So thank you for the
You're welcome.
questions.
I feel a need to point out, so I am a practitioner, a follower of human design, which is a self-development tool, combines astrology and I Ching and chakra wisdom and Kabbalah. And in it, we learn about our energy types. And I am pretty sure D'vorah is a generator, if not a manifesting generator. That means she's got a lot of onboard energy to do a lot. So even when she says, well, I feel like I don't have the time, but I'm gonna, we've heard her talk about pushing or like making time, going with that inclination and making it work. And I'm a projector, which is a non-energy type. And I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna be making it work in the ways that feel supportive and spacious. And I know that D'vorah is supportive of us choosing the ways that are supportive and spacious. So if I didn't know D'vorah these past 2 years, I would have been like, this is too much for me. And I want to say, I've learned also through my Kohenet training that I love learning in intensives. And I've learned to show up however, look, I'm modeling for you, show up however I can show up. And I trust that whatever I get in the way that I can show up is correct for me.
Yeah, is what you needed in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and we used to joke in the Kohenet in the yurt that we gathered in at Kohenet. Sometimes folks would be menstruating or not feeling great or just really tired or jet lagged. And you just show up and you lie down and just be in the space, experiencing, receiving the learning. We would joke that we get it by osmosis, even if we weren't, upright and alert in our bodies. Our souls are in the room, our energy field is in the room. We're getting what we need to get by being in community with each other. So if you feel like this community, this experience is for you, and oh my gosh, it also makes you feel a little out of breath, I just want to reassure you that I can be your buddy in I can be your buddy in taking it easy, and just noticing, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, that you can do less, still show up and do less. And I know D'vorah and the other faculty will absolutely support that way of showing up as well.
Yeah, I mean, because the main thing is to be a community and to be a learning community and to be open to all this amazing material and whatever somebody needs to make that happen. That's why I think I announced the other day that the final project will be decided together with each person, because that's what's needed. I want it to serve you, not to be some onerous thing that you have to do or you don't get the certificate. What purpose would that serve? That's certainly not the model we want to embody. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
Amazing.
Wonderful. We'll put some of these resources in the comments, and again, excited to be doing this. Thank you.
Yeah, and so if you have any, we already said questions, comments, curiosity, reach out to D'vorah. And anything else we want to say? Do you want to share anything about, do you want to close with a message from any of those cards you pulled today?
Did I put them away? Nope. Well, okay. Yes, answering the call. The time is now. That would certainly be appropriate. And that is from Denise Linn's Sacred Traveler deck. And the time is now. Well, that's certainly true. That's certainly true on many fronts. So many levels. I'm trying not to use the word fronts, because it's a war-based term, I figure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. So if you're hearing that voice inside you, loud or quiet, that says, I think this might be for me. What if this is for me? Oi, is it really for me?
Something's got to change in my life. Yeah.
Allow, just have a conversation, see if it feels like a fit. Reach out to D'vorah. And I hope that I will see you in the Women's Leadership Program starting at the beginning of May.
That's great. And I'm happy to have those exploratory conversations. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thanks, D'vorah, for sharing all of this with us. We're so excited.
Absolutely.
Okay. Take care, everyone.
Bye.